Doug, I want to welcome you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Definitely.
We
Well,
want
good
to
to
introduce ourselves first, and then we will introduce you and we'll have a discussion about what you're doing here in Eastern Idaho. My name is Dr. Michael Harris. I've had a podcast for the last year or two. I was a therapist for many, many years, and the podcast was about character and virtue and helping people to choose a virtue, incorporate that, and help you become your best self. I met Wayne a few months ago, and we joined up and decided to do some business things together. We have a message for businesses and organizations on how to develop character and also enhance leadership. And our motto is called Light Your Team on Fire. I was a therapist again for many, many years here in town, and I enjoy seeing people grow and change and becoming their best selves.
And you worked for Bingham too.
And I worked for Bingham for a number of years. So I'm going to introduce Wayne Davis to you and let him tell you a little bit about himself.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Doug. I'm Wayne Davis. I'm currently a part-time chaplain for a hospice company here in Eastern Idaho. And Michael has offices. He and his brother have an office building over on Woodruff, right next to Maverick and Jiffy Lube. So in case and that's how I met Michael. Michael, when I moved here in 2016, Michael was offering a workshop, and on the sign there on Woodruff, right next to Jiffy Lube, he put out a sign, and I said, I want to take his workshop. So I signed up for it and actually took his workshop twice. And that's where we first got acquainted, and then we've reconnected and working together. I was a minister for a number of years. I worked for the Greater Idaho Falls Chamber of Commerce pre-COVID, and then when COVID hit, I got laid off, and I was a minister, like I said, for a number of years. And after Chamber let me go because of COVID, I had to get another job. So I'm a chaplain, and I provide spiritual care for hospice patients. So that's a little bit about me. And Michael decided and I put this together because we want the community and our world to know about what people are doing here in Eastern Idaho. And you obviously are somebody that's making a difference. So we're excited to hear from you today.
This is Doug Toomer. He is an educator, he's an informer, he's an influencer, he's an advocate for those of us, particularly here in Eastern Idaho. And I call him the Paul Revere of East Idaho. You are bringing to light the things that people need to know about, important issues and concerns that we are facing. There's a lot of people in the dark. I've been to some of your meetings. They're very, very good. They're professional. You have great speakers. I know you have a remote audience as well. Before we jump into this, tell us a little bit about your background, why you started Stand Up for Idaho.
Okay, my background is I actually worked at the Idaho National Laboratory. I'm retired from there. I was over there a little over 40 years. My background is spent nuclear fuel and nuclear material management. Retired about 8 years ago. There were some things that happened that caused my retirement, put a little bit of a spark in where the starting of Stand Up for Idaho. Historically, I've never been involved in politics. I always thought that it didn't matter what side of the aisle you were on. You're trying to do your best, look out for the United States.
Yeah, but before we get too far in the weeds, we do want to hear all of that story. We did want to ask kind of another question. The name of the show is Making a Difference. What are some of the things that's influenced you? Why is that important to you?
Nothing. I never had the aspiration to be out in front of anybody. I really am a bit of an introvert. Truly, I've never been one to want to go out and make a difference in all this. I've had thoughts of things that could help people and could help the community. I did run for City Council of Idaho Falls. I thought I could make a difference then, but again, life happens, and that was a whole different story. So,
well, that's very interesting. One of the questions that we sent you ahead of time, but the question was, knowledge is power and awareness is so important. How do you motivate people to act on the information you provide?
It's hard. How do I get people to act? First off, we are nonpartisan. It's non-denominational, just us kids trying to figure out what's going on. I firmly believe for anybody to become active and do something, you have to see the evidence for yourself. All sides of the story is you set your biases aside, you set your preconceived notions aside, and it's hard to do. And lay things out, start connecting the dots. And what you'll find out is your logical self will lead you to what is true. Once you embrace that truth, that will and should hopefully motivate you into doing something different. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You need to be able to embrace what the truth is and then figure out how can you, with your skills, your time, your everything else, what can you do to fix things. It is hard to get people to become active.
Is activism from community members important to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I can't make them. And it's like the other night, there was a discussion. Idaho Falls mayoral race will be up next year. I asked how many people lived in the city of Idaho Falls, and a bunch of hands went up. I asked them how many of them would be willing to run for mayor. Not one hand went up. At some point in time, you have to make the decision. Are you going to sit on the couch and just watch, or are you actually going to try to participate? I would really love to see the community be active and work on resolving the issues that they see. I can't do it. I can't fix it for them, etc.
Doug, let me ask you a question. What is sustaining you that's keeping you going week to week? Because I know this organization is only about 4 to 5 years old, and you have a speaker almost every week. This isn't an easy thing to do, is it? What is sustaining you?
What is sustaining me is invariably every week I'll have somebody new come and they'll say, I never knew you were doing this. Thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate that. You've been to my events. I don't charge for them. It's not about making money. I am not a wealthy person. I have personally funded most of it. I have a jar that people can donate. That helps a little bit, but it definitely does not cover the cost. I do believe that I am being called to do this. A lot of people ask, where do you get your speakers? How do you find them? The reality is they come to me, something happens. In my mind, there's divine intervention that has helped me get some things. Here's this opportunity, Doug, go do this. I feel like a pinball. The God's slapping me around, telling your head the wrong way, do this, do that, and okay, fine, I'm following the best that I can. It's by his grace that I've done what I've been able to do. And honestly, I do more often than I like. My wife and I will sit down and say, why are we doing this? It's not easy. I have made enemies. I have made friends. Should we just walk away? The next Wednesday, we'll have it, and somebody will come up and say, we're really glad you did this. And okay.
I looked at your bio, and there's some things that didn't work out for you in terms of running for this office or running for that one. But I wonder, as you just said, if you've been placed here for a reason and that there's other things coming down the pike to bring the awareness to the people of Eastern Idaho.
I don't know what's going on. Like I say, I'm just following a lead that is coming from somewhere and we're just doing the best we can.
Well, we appreciate that. I'll speak for Michael and I that you were willing to come today and share your story. And we hope a lot of people will view this podcast and see what you're doing. And thank you for making a difference. But Michael, I think you wanted to ask some questions specifically about what Doug's doing, I think. Didn't we want to get
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe can I put up, I've got a screenshot of Stand Up for Idaho. Can I put that up?
Sure.
Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can take a minute and kind of go through that and explain what Stand Up for Idaho is.
We want to be a statewide organization, a nonpartisan, but it's this us kids, us citizens, whatnot, understanding what's going on, and ultimately by doing that, that causes us to know what our rights and liberties are. And we do believe in the Constitution of the United States. We do believe that it was created with divine intervention and that it was best agreement among men. We do believe that we are all divine sovereign individuals. We are both very special in our own ways, and we have rights. We need to live in this world together and in a good moral way, and a way that is beneficial to me and beneficial to you.
So you all have a weekly meeting. How
Yes.
difficult was it to find a meeting place?
Originally, we just started out real small in a conference room. I didn't know what I was doing and where I was being led. And it was a little hard to find places because something that was affordable, because it's just me paying for this. I ended up going over to the Snake River Event Center at the Shiloh Inn, and he likes what I'm doing. He's been very supportive of us and helpful on making things affordable for us to be there. I'll just say that opportunities come up from out of nowhere, it seems, and it makes you say, okay, it leads you from here to there to there. Surprisingly, it wasn't all that difficult, because I think, to be blunt about it, God's leading me in this direction, and that's why that part of it wasn't all that hard at that point.
Can I ask you, what are the 2 or 3 biggest issues that we're facing as a country, but maybe more particularly Eastern Idaho, as we go into this new year?
People don't understand what's really happening in the world, in the country, and in Idaho. I didn't understand, 4.5 years ago. Like, we had the COVID going on and the mandates and all of this and the government overreach on that. And then now we see the water issues going on in East Idaho and the population growth. And I'll just have to say this. People don't understand what the New World Order is, that the New World Order is alive and well in Idaho. These last 8 years, from Trump initially getting in through Biden, and now things aren't the way that most people perceive that they should be.
If you're in the Eastern Idaho area, please come down and go to a meeting. It's at the Shiloh on Wednesdays about 6:30.
Correct. Yeah, it's at the Snake River Event Center, which is adjacent to the Shiloh Inns there, and we start promptly at 6:30. Doors open about 5:30, quarter to 6.
So, well, somebody said some people seek for greatness and some people have greatness thrust upon them. You've decided, like, I'm going to stand up and make a difference. One of my favorite Norman Rockwell paintings is of a community meeting, and it shows a man standing with a well-worn face and hands that obviously have worked his whole life, and he's standing up and he's making his voice heard, and you're making your voice heard. And so thank you for making a difference in our world and our community, your courage and your faith, and wish you the best in getting your message out there to folks.
Well, I appreciate that. I do have a couple of things I'd like to say, and it's a couple of memes I found. But this thing's called ants in a jar. I'm going to read it real quick. It's the analogy that we need to pay attention to. If you go to the Southwest desert and catch 100 red fire ants, as well as 100 large black ants, and put them in a jar, at first nothing will happen. However, if you vigorously shake the jar and dump them back on the ground, the ants will fight until they eventually kill each other.
Wow.
The thing is, the red ants think the black ants are the enemy and vice versa, when in reality, the real enemy is the person who shook the jar. And that's exactly what's happening in society today. Liberal versus conservative, white versus black, pro-mask versus anti-mask. The real question we need to be asking ourselves is who is shaking the jar and why. And we need to really look at those things. Take toddlers of all races, it doesn't matter whether they're handicapped or whatever, and you put them in a room to play. They will become friends. Something has happened to cause them to change. Pure children, they are what we need to be like. What is causing us to change? I believe that we're in a jar and we're being shaken. I also have another meme, but what we have is a bunch of people standing up here and a guy here with a whip. Guy picks up the whip, everybody bows to that person. Somebody stands up. A few more people stand up. Everybody stands up. The guy with the whip is the one that is bowing. This is what we have to do. Somebody's causing this, but this is what we need to do. And for us to do these things, we need to recognize, embody in ourselves what is true, what is really happening, so that we can take up the action.
That is a powerful message.
It is. And I think of two historical examples that just come to my mind. I can think of three. I think of Mahatma Gandhi in India, who decided that he was not going to bow, and he began to teach and, if you will, preach. I guess he was kind of a preacher about nonviolence in India. And Joan of Arc in France, who decided she was going to stand up and try to free her people from oppression. And Lech Wałęsa, who in Poland, he was just the president of a dock workers union. And he said, enough is enough. And he stood up and changed the course of his country. And so we appreciate your efforts, Doug. You're just somebody, you're being a light on the hill. You're being salt. And thank you for what you're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Well, the words, and I am not any of those people. But I will say this, it's the comments like that you just did to keep me going. I will survive, but I'm really concerned about my kids, my grandkids, future generations. I actually feel the blame myself because I didn't pay attention. I didn't know any better. And so now it's time for me to do what I can to redeem myself.
If your message touches just one life in this podcast or one person that attends your meetings, it really is all worth it. Thank you for your inspiring words. I'm also thinking of our country. 250 years ago, there was only 25 to 30% who were willing to fight for freedom. It wasn't a majority, was it?
And actually, it was less than 10%. On that, I would encourage you, if you haven't seen it, and your followers and stuff, to go. You know who Paul Harvey is? Paul Harvey has a video out, an old one, and it's called "Their Lives, Their Fortunes, and Their Sacred Honor."
I've seen it.
Okay, it is a very powerful video. And and he describes what our founding fathers and our founders, because women were involved too, that our founders went through and sacrificed to create this country. And it's the short of it is people say, well, they didn't have anything to lose. That is totally incorrect. They had everything to lose. So, we have to do that.
Again, once again, I appreciate it on behalf of Wayne and those that listen to your program. Thank you for taking the time to share your message today, and we wish you all the best and value what you're doing down there.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, and those that are watching the podcast, we hope you'll join us next time. We're looking forward to having another person who's making a difference in their community. And Doug, thank you again so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
All the best.